going to now move to the next session and starting with a question. So, how to accelerate the pace and also increase the volume of technologies that make it to market and also create European innovation champions? That's really the question which is at the heart of the European Innovation Council, the EIC. So to know more about the EIC and also its future, we ask Jean-David Malo, the director of the EIC task force, to answer some of the questions that we had. And so here's a recorded interview conducted for the Attract conference by Richard Hudson, who is the Science Business Editor-in-Chief.
Welcome. My name is Richard Hudson. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Science Business, and I'd like to welcome you now to a conversation with someone who is extremely important for the development and the investment of deep tech and other technologies in Europe. That is Jean-David Malo. He is the director of the European Innovation Council, which is a relatively new funding body that is part of the European Commission's Horizon 2020 program, and soon will be graduating to the next big program in January, which is to be called Horizon Europe. Jean-David, welcome.
Thank you.
Now, for those who are curious, what is the European Innovation Council?
So the idea of the European Innovation Council, Richard, emerged, as you know, something like 4 or 5 years ago, where we took stock at the situation in Europe, which can be characterized in simple terms by being still a leader in generation of knowledge in a number of domains, and in particular in emerging technologies, but remaining very weak in its capacity to transform this knowledge into innovation, into products, into growth and jobs, in fact, for Europe. And on that basis, in fact, and building on the success that we had already in the past in the 2 areas, notably, for example, on the future emerging technology as far as the upstream dimension of what would be later on the European Innovation Council, but also building on what we have learned regarding the support to SMEs via program like SM Instrument, what we have learned in terms of access to finance with a program like Innofin in Horizon 2020 and in strong cooperation with the European Fund for Strategic Investment. We have tried to build, in fact, a more integrated approach for the benefit of innovators.
So you brought these 3 strands
all together to create a one-stop shop, in reality, for any innovators in Europe, from the emergence of a radical idea up to the development of a company that can penetrate a particular market worldwide. So very ambitious approach.
So just to be clear, as opposed to fundamental research, this is about developing an idea into a market-ready product.
Indeed. And if you see, for example, I mean, it was already the case today, the main difference between the European Research Council on the one hand, which is starting also at very, very low TRL readiness level, and the future emerging technology, which will turn into the Pathfinder tomorrow. The main difference between the two is the focus on tech on the side of the EIC, and we will talk a little bit about deep tech, I think, during our conversation today. And this is, you have already at the beginning, even if maybe it will not materialize at the end, you have already at the beginning an idea of what could be the result if it is successful in terms of impact and creation of activities. So we have been relatively, and even more than relatively, we have been lucky by the fact that this proposal to create this tool for the benefit of innovators in Europe have been endorsed and backed by the European Council already in the summer of 2018. And in the summer of 2018, the European Council made something really surprising, I mean positively surprising, because he has requested the European Commission to already test the EIC IDs despite the fact that the EIC was only in the proposal for Horizon Europe. So in the last year, a year and a half, let's say, we have started already to test these new avenues, both on the upstream port and in the downstream port. What I'm calling the upstream port is indeed this support to emerging technologies.
So that's the stuff right out of the labs or the research.
Exactly, and
Universities.
exactly, and but also enterprise. You know, for example, today in the FET, in its bottom-up approach, FET Open, or its
Future Emerging Technology.
exactly Future Emerging Technology Program, in its bottom-up approach, which is called FET Open today, or in its top-down approach, challenge-based approach, which is called FET Proactive, you have already 15% of the participants that are enterprise. Which explain also the difference with the ERC approach. Huh? You see already there in the composition of consortia. But what our ambition in this part is to provide additional support, in fact, to these consortia in their ideas, to bring, in fact, as far as possible, the development of the technology to a higher TRL. I mean, TRL 5 or TRL 6, in order to have already prototype first testing, before the move to what we are calling the downside part of the EIC.
Downstream part.
The downstream part, not the downside,
not
sorry.
quite downside.
The downstream part of the EIC. But have in mind that it remains a weakness in Europe. Where the idea is to transfer, in fact, this knowledge that has been created into the creation of a company, or that a company is taking this company and is carrying out, in fact, and develop the technology to penetrate the market. So to do that between the two, in fact, we have launched our first idea of what we are calling transition activities. So I mean, tech to transfer activities to make the bridge between the upstream port, which is called the Pathfinder in the EIC, and the downstream port, which is called the Accelerator.
Kind of like bridging what is often called the Valley of Death.
Exactly.
Where you start with an idea and then you can't continue it because you don't have enough money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's true that on the Pathfinder port, I mean, we are still leaders in Europe. Huh? I mean, if you look, for example, of what is emerging in quantum technology, in photonics, in robotics, in biotech, and I mean, we are still leaders in the world. But it doesn't mean that we should stop investing. We should continue to invest, but we should provide more means for the innovators to transform this into innovation. But where we have to do our most important effort is on the other side, I mean on the accelerator side, where, and we have experienced it clearly even more during the COVID crisis, we absolutely need to take more risk if we want some really potentially impactful idea to turn into life. I mean, here the issue is not to blame the investors. I mean, by definition, you have to understand what are the constraints of the investors. I mean, and to take into account what is the situation of the VC market in Europe, the relatively small size of VC funds, the difficulty to invest in various countries, because even if we have done a lot of improvement in terms of single market achievement, we are not comparable, for example, to a market like the US. I mean, it's not comparable. So we need to take even more risk, and the idea is to de-risk a number of investments for potential other investors. And for the first time, what we are proposing and what we are testing now for 1 year is to invest directly in this type of startups and deep tech SMEs.
So to buy shares in these
companies. To buy shares, to act nevertheless as a silent investor, because the idea is not to take the ownership of this company. Not at all. I mean, the idea is to accompany them in their growth. So the idea is not to dilute, in fact, the ownership of the company, but to provide additional security and more lens in terms of development of the technology for these promising ideas.
So how much money are we talking about for a company? How much equity? I mean, how many?
Yeah. Because indeed we are talking about equity here, or convertible loans, or whatever the form of equity it may take. If I take the pilot now, so in 1 year we intend to invest in 140 startups. Maybe an additional 10 will be selected in the last call in 10 or 20 in the last call in October. and we intend to invest between 600 and 650 million euro.
Okay.
Okay, so now if you transpose this for the future framework program, our idea is that if indeed we have ultimately and hopefully the budget that we have proposed, so 10 billion euro for the whole EIC, at least 10 billion euro, we consider that the investment pot will be certainly around 3 to 3.5 billion euro.
3 to 3.5 billion.
Yes.
So that would make you one of the biggest venture capitalists in Europe.
Indeed.
And how can you manage that?
So first of all, we have already set up the fund. I mean, we have created an EIC fund, which turned into operation in the 22nd of June this year, which is located in Luxembourg, which is operational, and I can already announce you, because the moment it will be disseminated, that the board of directors of the fund have already taken its first decision of investment. So we have identified 140, but the due diligence took place, and now the decision of investment will be announced. So the first decision of investment will be announced in the course of September. And a number of companies will sign in the coming weeks and months their investment contract with the EIC fund.
But so how does this work then? Does the taxpayer get a return on this investment? I mean, why? You're a government body, you know?
Yeah, but I mean, it's not, I mean, you know, when you are providing a grant to a university, an enterprise, and whatever, it's also taxpayer money. And there, I mean, for absolutely good reason, you have no return. I mean, the money is paid. And the return is not financial. The return is expected to be on what will be the use of this money for the benefit of a particular area. Okay. There you are doing exactly the same, but potentially you have also a return. Because if, a financial return, because if the company is indeed growing up, we will go out from the company because we have not the intention to remain in the capital of the company. The idea is, as you said rightly, to accompany them during the various value of debts that they may have. And this is the reason why we are ready to provide, indeed, in the context of the pilot, an investment that may reach up to 15 million euro of equity, which is a huge amount. Huh? We are not only covering here stages like seed or pre-seed, or I mean, we are already in Series A to a certain extent in reality. But we will do it also with other investors. And the idea is that gradually we will leave the capital of the companies and the private sector will jump in. Because our objective is not to crowding out the private investments. On the contrary, is to de-risk the investment of the private investor. And in the announcement that we will make regarding the first investment, you will see that we have already co-investment. So we will not be the only investors.
So from private investors.
From private investors.
Okay. Well, that's very interesting. But the technologies that we're talking about here, I mean, you're covering all areas of technology. But specifically, this conference is about deep tech. Yeah. So have you already been funding anything that you would call deep tech, and will you be?
Yes, and when I look at the companies we have selected, in the accelerator, but I will say a few words also about the Pathfinder, because the Pathfinder is by its own nature fully or more or less fully deep tech oriented. Yeah. But in the accelerator part, when I look at the companies that we have funded via grants or via blended finance, so grant and equity, the huge majority of them are deep tech oriented. I mean, first of all, maybe
what is deep tech? What is deep tech?
What do we mean by deep tech? So the first time the terminology of deep tech was used, it was used by the CEO of an investment firm.
But of course.
And it was to qualify, in fact, companies, not projects, companies. So companies that were based on scientific discovery, or meaningful engineering innovation. So, and which has a particularity, for example, to develop products or services that are based on a mix between digital and particular scientific technology. So, for example, in the quantum technology, in the robotic, in the artificial intelligence, in biotech. So this is what we mean by deep tech. And by definition, this type of product and this type of company are requesting a lot of investments. I mean, deep tech by definition is more expensive.
Yeah.
But you see how it may modify the society. I mean, nobody today can fully estimate what will be the impact, for example, of artificial intelligence applied in different domains. Because what is interesting is this type of technology could be used in different type of domains. And when I look for example, a project that we have supported in magnetic resonance imaging, I mean, it could be used in health sector, in hospitals, for example, but it could also be used in the ocean. So the same technology could be used for different purpose, and therefore the markets are different. We have supported, and we will support also a company which is developing a prototype of a plane which is fully electric, but with passengers that could be more than 50. So not only.
So we're not talking about a little drone here.
It's a plane.
Yeah.
And they are already working on the prototype, and it's already a company. It's a startup. So you see the type of impact it may have. Now, in early stage, of course, in the Pathfinder, there you have, by definition, projects that are fully deep tech and that are scientifically driven. No? And there, I mean, we are building on, let's be clear, a very successful program that was a Future Emerging Technology program, I mean, which is here for 30 years. Huh?
Yeah.
And that nobody has challenged when you look at the results they have achieved. And you know that from this program, big initiative emerge on the quantum, on the brain, on whatever. So and we will continue to do this in the future with the Pathfinder, but with the idea not only to create knowledge, but really to transform this knowledge. So this is what is at stake, in fact. And there we do believe that each type of innovators can play a role. I mean, what I like a lot, for example, in the Pathfinder program, is that it is not limited to universities or RTOs. You have from the very beginning enterprise that are present. And therefore you have a community of different stakeholders that are trying to develop a radical new idea.
Well, that's actually an important point that several have raised before. This issue in Europe of being able to cross borders of country, language, discipline, private and public, in order to have an ecosystem. Is that a continuing problem in Europe, or are we getting it?
Let's say, I mean, it would be unfair to say that you have not a number of positive evolutions there. You have positive evolution. And let's start with what is the impact of a number of knowledge innovation center of the EIT. I mean,
that's the European Institute of Innovation and Technology.
Exactly. Yeah. And in particular, some of their KICs, so their Knowledge and Innovation Center community, have really created more integrated ecosystem around a particular domain. I mean, look at what has been done by the KIC InnoEnergy in the energy field. Look at what has been done, for example, in the digital sector by the digital KIC, and what is going to be done, but very quickly and with a lot of impact on the health one. I mean, clearly they have been able to create a better integration between the various actors.
Well, another example is the subject of this conference, Attract.
Attract.
Yes.
Perfect.
170 projects of deep tech.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, you know how close I am with Attract, because I launched Attract when I was the director for research for open science and open innovation.
Well, actually, I didn't know that.
So because at that time I was in charge also of research infrastructures.
Okay.
And I do believe that, I mean, everybody think about research infrastructures as being absolutely vital, of course, for structuring the European research area, for providing tools for basic research and so on. It's true. I mean, it's obvious. But they have a huge potential in terms of innovation too, in reality. And it's on the basis of this idea that together with my colleagues several years ago, we launched this idea to do something with some of the research infrastructures of the Aero Forum in order to see how some innovation could emerge from
So Aeroforum, that's CERN and the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility and et cetera. These very, very big
for the
labs. Yeah.
Yes, the
well,
big
this
ones.
is Brussels, Jean David.
Yes,
acronyms
true,
everywhere.
But I should change a little bit the way I speak about this. So, and what they have achieved, I mean, with a relatively small budget, is just impressive. And how they have been involved also to embed students, because I mean, in this context, you have also students that are part of the work is just impressive. And I do believe that we will be able only to have an impact in the context of this third pillar in the Horizon Europe, if we are continuing to build synergies with other parts of the framework program and with other stakeholders. I have the intention, of course, subject to the agreement with the member states in our program committee to continue this cooperation with research infrastructures, in particular on the downstream part of the emergence of new technology, because you have a reservoir of incredible ideas there that we have to use. I mean, it should be absolutely stupid not to build on it. So this is why I was very happy to see what are the results that have been achieved by a track. And then I would be more than welcome to see how we could do more in the future altogether in the context of the EIC, but also in the context of the European innovation ecosystem, which is, as you know, a small program, but a very important program in the future third pillar of Horizon Europe.
Okay. Well, okay, so capital is one thing that you're trying to solve. Ecosystem is another. Is there something else, though, that needs fixing if we are going in Europe, if we are going to have more deep tech?
I think that if we are already able to tackle these two main challenges, we will have made the most important part of the journey. Well, but if I could, we should not forget education.
Education.
At any moment, training all over the life also, and not only the prior education in this context. We have in Europe talented people, but we have also to provide them with the possibility to have access to other capacities, other skills. And in this type of revolution we are facing, I mean, what I'm calling the deep tech revolution today, I mean, by definition, you have to upgrade your skills on a regular basis. And it's true also for our enterprise. So if we are not providing this capacity, this type of services to our companies, I mean, we will miss something. And this is something I do believe is very important. Of course, when you were mentioning ecosystem, I mean, you are covering a number of things in ecosystem. So we were talking about the connection of the various actors, but if I look, for example, of the growth of startups and SMEs, it's absolutely vital, for example, also to create the condition for them to have access with big corporate. Because in a number of domains, I mean, some big corporate, in fact, are driving the evolution. So, of course, you can try to have the ambition to become the next big corporate, but to penetrate the market at a certain extent. Today, you have also in certain domain a win-win situation for large corporate to work with startups. And this is something that we are trying to intensify in the context of the EIC, in what we are calling our business acceleration services. We are working in this context with, for example, Jim Snaber, which is part of our advisory board, which is the chair of Siemens and Merckx, in order to see how we could do more in the future for the benefit of both corporate
You mean
and
to actually
startups.
to
Matching.
let them meet each other?
Yeah, intermediate, and to create some matching link between them.
Well, which is kind of a little bit what you did in the middle of the early days of the COVID crisis.
Exactly.
Too. In the case of health care, you
Indeed.
set up a matching. What would you call it?
We make
conference?
a yes
Matchmaking conference.
We make an e-pitching because everything is e
Yeah.
these days.
Yeah.
We made an e-pitching between some of our EIC beneficiaries and health actors, including procurers or investors, in order to make this kind of links. And this is a type of things that we intend to do even more in the future. Because, I mean, money is absolutely vital, but it's not sufficient. I mean, you were mentioning capital, which is indeed certainly one of the most important revolution in the program we are proposing. But what is absolutely even more important in reality is to provide a friendly ecosystem for a company to flourish. And this is mainly a question of connecting people, but also of providing services in a very easy way. And this is a challenge, of course, because it requires that we are not duplicating what exists on the market. I mean, let's take an example. You have a number of services that are proposed by some EIT kick. And let's take the example, to be even more concrete, the accompanying services provided by InnoEnergy. We are doing also a number of services for our energy-oriented startups in the EIC. Why not to do it together? I mean, it would be stupid
to bring these things together. So you have a.
So we agreed with InnoEnergy, with the KIC Digital, with the KIC Climate, and the KIC Health, to start with the first pilot on which we could work together. And I hope that in the coming weeks and months we could go indeed even more further.
Well, but where is all of this going? I mean, just the last point is just, at the moment, there's a lot of talk in Brussels about technology sovereignty, about Europe being strong on its own in technology. Is that what this is for, what you're doing?
I mean, it's absolutely obvious that the EIC will play a role in the EIC tech sovereignty objective. It's absolutely clear.
Is it realistic? I mean, how can any country be sovereign
It
now
is.
in
Well,
technology?
look, for example. So at least we have the tools. When I told you a few minutes ago that, for example, we will have the possibility not only to invest in company, but to take golden shares in the company, if the company is considered as crucial, for example, in a number of domains,
the vaccine,
for example, but also if you look at certain areas which are important for our security. I mean, not only there, it's absolutely vital that we keep in Europe a number of technology on our own, because otherwise, I mean, we will be in the hands of other countries, and of course, everybody has in mind the US and China. And this is not only a question of being the leader in one domain or another. This may have an impact on the society we are living in. The fact that you have a number of companies that are dominating quasi in a monopolistic way a number of domains can change the society in which we are doing if we have no word to say. Look, for example, on how the artificial intelligence in a number of domains is evolving.
Well,
we have not
simply look at the impact of social media on politics,
for example,
around the world.
And and if you cannot grasp this, I mean, if you cannot have a hands-on on this, I mean, it's our own vision of what means to live in society, which is a stake at a reality. So today, not to take into account what is, for me, very important, which is a tech sovereignty, is missing the target. If indeed we want to maintain our vision of what does it mean to live in society, our own values, our own vision of the society, which is not the same as the US, not the same as China. We have our own model. You like it or you don't like it, but we have our own model. And this is a key question. And tech in this context and tech sovereignty is absolutely vital.
So this program is underway. It is growing. It has a broader purpose, as you just described.
Yeah.
And for that, we wish you well in this.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for joining us,
It was a pleasure to be
Jean-David.
with you today.
Okay.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you, Jean-David Malo, and thank you, Richard Hudson, for this really insightful interview. It really lays down where the potential are and how the efforts needs to be put together to achieve what the future holds, indeed, in terms of aspiration and also potential realization for science, research, and technology and innovation in Europe. Of course, at Attract, we'll be following the development of the EIC with great interest because we're sharing the same objective, which is to bring technology and especially deep tech to market even faster.